My name is Mike Alvitro. I'm the biotechnology instructor at the Trumbull Career Technical Center, and my background is in biology with minors in chemistry and environmental science, and I've been involved with education for 23 years now. To reduce the carbon footprint, really the most effective means of reducing one's carbon footprint is to reduce the amount of carbon that you produce. You can talk about ways in which you would mitigate carbon that's already been produced, but those really are not significant and don't get you very far. What you need to do is simply use less. And what I mean by use less is you simply use less fossil fuels. That means you drive less. You keep your house at a lower temperature so that you don't run the furnace as often. You don't burn hydrocarbons needlessly. All of those things go to actually reducing one's carbon footprint. The way carbon affects the environment is that when carbon is released into our atmosphere, it's typically released in the form of carbon dioxide. When you burn a hydrocarbon fuel, like say maybe the gasoline that's in your car, or whether it be the methane that you use to heat your home, you always produce two things in any combustion reaction, that is carbon dioxide and water vapor. The carbon dioxide, as it goes up into the atmosphere, acts as what we call a greenhouse gas. And just like in a real greenhouse, you have glass panes that allow solar energy to go through the glass. That thermal or that solar energy in the form of light is converted into heat when it strikes the plants and everything else that's in the greenhouse. And then as that thermal energy attempts to escape, the glass keeps it or retains it. Well, carbon dioxide and methane work in the same fashion in our atmosphere. Light from the sun impinges or strikes the Earth's surface, heats up the surface of the Earth, that heats up the air, and normally that heat would try to escape or dissipate into the surrounding, what is outside of our atmosphere. But in the case where you have this carbon dioxide blanket acting as an insulator, that heat is retained, and with time, as carbon dioxide levels increase, overall global temperatures increase as well. Well, carbon, really in the form of carbon dioxide, is what causes global warming. As I mentioned, as that carbon dioxide is found in the atmosphere and as its levels build, the insulating effect of that carbon dioxide blanket, if you could think of it like that, only increases with time. And what we see is that a relatively small overall change in global temperature can have pretty significant effects on things like global or regional climate. Maybe an area that was typically rather arid is no longer arid, or a place that was typically had quite a bit of rainfall no longer gets rainfall. We also see that we might see an intensity in the level of storms or the frequency of certain storms like hurricanes and typhoons. And so there's just a few degrees change in the average temperature of the planet makes a world of difference in the climate that we experience. Methane, as well as carbon dioxide, is a greenhouse gas. In fact, methane is actually an even better greenhouse gas. It's probably about 20 times more effective at retaining the heat that we would normally lose to space. And so the question becomes, well, what are the sources of methane? Well, how does methane get into our atmosphere? Well, there are some places, like for example, when we drill for methane in the form of natural gas, some of that escapes and is released into the atmosphere. But a majority of the world's methane actually comes from other sources. For example, the raising of certain livestock like cattle. Cattle produce great amounts of methane. We also see methane generated naturally whenever you have a lot of organic matter that is decaying in the absence of oxygen. So we have places like swamps, for example. We have a lot of organic matter dead laying on the bottom of that swamp in the absence of oxygen. Rather than carbon dioxide be generated by those bacteria, they produce methane. That methane is then gassed off and released into the atmosphere, where it too acts, as I said, as an even better form of greenhouse gas.